graduate hotel Roosevelt Island.
You talking to me?
Fantastic.
Okay.
Because
What am I sending you?
the island,
I don't know, you know, articles.
easy access on the subways or the train.
Propaganda?
Yeah, 2000, maybe, oh.
Is there rumor about
technical difficulties here, but I think we're up and running now. This is the Tuesday, April 11th, 2023, Hopkinton Conservation Commission meeting. And we'll start with the work session items. So we have some documents for review that we went through at the last meeting. Bodega, 67 Oakhurst Road, a negative determination of applicability. Goal, 56 Downey Street, an order of conditions. And the Trails, 0 Legacy Farms North, an amended order of conditions. Are those already signed, Kim?
You'll need to sign them before you leave today.
Okay, all right. Draft minutes for review, January 24th and February 7th, 2023. Did everyone get a chance to read through those? Any questions or comments? Okay, if I can get a motion to approve both sets of minutes, please.
I'll move. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Legacy Farms North and South mitigation. We have a discussion on the mitigation for the wetland work that and resource area work that was supposed to be done. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So Mark Arnold with Goddard Consulting, here with Eric Swenson from Legacy Farms LLC. We got Lucas Environmental's letter dated March 9th, reviewing our wetland mitigation protocol. So just to recap where we came from, the site had multiple wetland impacts that were going to be mitigated in multiple wetland areas. When Goddard went out and looked at the wetland mitigation areas, one area was already built. 2 other large mitigation areas, M2 and M3, were basically wetlands. And when we went out and basically kind of gently delineated them with GPS, we had about 1.9 acres of extra wetlands out there. In addition, now that development has kind of started to kind of finish up in a lot of areas, we're starting to see the total land preservation on the whole property. Out of 700 acres, you've got 500 acres of open space, 70%. So there's a large portion of land that's been preserved as part of this project that was part of the previous Weston Nurseries thing. A few things that we saw that were highlights in Lucas Environmentals they like the fact that we're doing all our plantings, we're doing all our wildlife habitat features, and that was great. The few things that we had a few concerns on was because we've done so much open space mitigation, 500 acres, our wetland protocol focused on the wetland replication areas and those adjacent areas that were buffer zone that would need enhancements to ensure that those wetland replications could be successful. So that's why we excluded M1 West from that, because M1 West is just a buffer zone area, and there's other areas around that that are in similar conditions. And so we felt that leaving that to continue to success as it normally has was an adequate mitigation, again, considering the large scope of the whole project. Lucas did bring up the fact that the order did have a 5-year invasive species monitoring for all the mitigation areas. And that's amenable to the client, but we were hoping that we could have a year-to-year basis, do 2 years minimum, and then every year, if Lucas can come out, we'll pay them to come out, check the area, see if we still need to do another year of mitigation. So basically 2 years minimum, up to 5 years in invasive species management. Again, we're not pushing to say we're only going to do 2 years. We just want Lucas to kind of come and check to see, because there may be a situation where maybe after 3 years, 4 years, we can say, you know what, we're at a successful point here where we can close things out. Again, it'd be under their review. The last thing that Lucas had, I think that was a highlight, was the question of the bank mitigation. And they had basically three things that they wanted the applicant to look at. One was the actual total bank impact for the project, the required bank mitigation, and the completed bank mitigation. So as part of M3, there is, M2. As part of M2, there is some bank restoration happening along the edge there. We're doing invasive species management. And there's also bank enhancement at M3 along an existing ditch. Although that wasn't proposed, it's functionally the same there. We do want to provide the commission that information. We think that is sort of a secondary item to the main mitigation and wetland protocol areas. And so we'd want to fold that into our mitigation protocol as something that will be done as part of the overall scope, which is going out, delineating the current wetlands, comparing them to the old wetlands, showing the commission how much wetlands has actually expanded as delineated previously and delineated and peer reviewed by Lucas, so you can see that difference and that expansion. Also giving you as-built plans to show you those areas and also what happened. And that'll allow us to evaluate the bank impacts as a whole, and then that can be addressed in another area if necessary at that time. So those are the main highlights that I had, Joe, from your letter. I'm not sure if there's anything else particularly that you'd want to highlight.
Yeah, I think you touched on all the, really the outstanding comments that we had and addressed them pretty well. The one thing I would mention regarding area M1 not being included in the mitigation protocol, and it is currently vegetated buffer zone, but it does have oriental bittersweet, fair amount it appears to be present in there, and our recommendation was that at least that be included in the invasive mitigation plan.
So we did look at that. There are invasives present. We're not. We have looked at the area, and it's interior buffer zone to an area that's buffer zone near development already, and the number of acres that we've already preserved on the property we feel is pretty significant mitigation for going through that area and cleaning out the invasives. Again, we're doing invasive species management for M2 and M3. To ensure that those wetlands are successful and fully native, and the buffer zone mitigation around them also is native.
Okay, maybe we can include it in the monitoring program and not necessarily the mitigation, so that we can at least keep an eye on it to make sure that it's not expanding.
Certainly,
You know,
yep.
that would
We
be-
could definitely do it.
And if it is, we can, address it at a later date. Does that make sense, Joe?
Yeah, I think it does, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
Jeff?
Yes,
Quick
go ahead.
question. You say management. Does that mean eradication and then management, or you just?
So
Make sure it doesn't get any worse.
invasive species management in M2 and M3, the process is twofold. One is we're going to go in with manual removal to remove everything that we can, roots and stumps, everything else. Everything comes out, gets out, it's going to get chipped, taken off site, and probably incinerated. So that way there's no potential for those invasives to spread on site, and ensures that we get the main root mass, which is where you're going to get regrowth. So we're not just cutting and leaving. We want to extract those roots out of the ground. And after that happens at M2 and M3, we have the plantings going in. And so you're going to end up with invasives out, plantings in around the existing natives to basically bolster that. And then monitoring will be every basically year. We'll be out there checking, and then usually what happens is we'll review, we'll provide the applicant and the commission a report saying this is the status of what's out there. Do we find invasives? Yes. Do we need to go out and hand pull? Do we need a crew, or was I able to go pull them when I was doing my inspection? It depends on the site. Sometimes I can pull them all myself, which I try to do. Other times I have to say I need a crew to come help me pull, and that will happen basically year-to-year basis. And our goal will be to be aggressive in those first 2 years, particularly the first 2 to 3 years, because our goal would be to try to have success early on.
Thank you.
Through the chair, what
Yes, sir.
what invasives are we talking about?
So the main invasives out there are multiflora rose, oriental bittersweet. There's some buckthorn, there's some Russian olive. Trying to remember what else.
No knotweed.
So there was, I saw there was not a patch there 2 years ago, but there's a patch by it's across from M1 East. So there's no knotweed near M1 East where we're doing invasive species management. M2 there's no knotweed. M3 there's no knotweed. So it's present on site, but it's not where we're planning on doing any of the plantings.
So as far as you're concerned, it's not your problem.
I mean, I want knotweed to be my problem because I'm working on it at my parents' house. So because I don't want their property to be taken over by knotweed.
Because knotweed does not respond well to, what you talked about doing.
Agreed. Yeah. If there was knotweed in my mitigation areas, I would not propose hand removal because I know it's not going to be successful. So
I would say if we do encounter it, it's going to get painted.
Yeah, we would probably do stem injection. So, and I think if that's the thing too, we can add to this too, that if there's knotweed encountered, this is what we would do. So that way the commission sees what we want to do, and that way the commission can feel comfortable that we're going to do what's necessary.
Okay.
Okay, so Joe and Kim, the 2-year minimum up to the 5 years, are you comfortable with that?
I would say I'm comfortable. I do kind of feel like it's a little redundant for the applicant to, ultimately pay for Joe to take a look at it and then also to pay for Goddard to go out and manage it. I mean, if there's successful management, the management effort should be really small each year.
Oh, I agree.
That's it's just my 2 cents.
We just want to be transparent.
Yeah.
I mean, it does seem redundant, but if they're willing to pay for them to go out, I guess that's up to you guys.
Yeah, it's at our risk too. If we feel we're done with what we're there and we're not, obviously we're going to come back. So.
Right, yep. Okay. So if you're comfortable with that, I am. Any other questions, comments from the commission? Questions or comments from the audience? Okay, so I think we are good on this. We do want to see the bank impacts, the required mitigation, the actual mitigation quantified.
Yep.
So if you can provide that to the commission, that would be great. Other than that, Kim, I think
I was just wondering kind of what's your time frame, what's your timeline for?
So our hope is to provide you a document that Lucas could at least review internally to say, yes, you've addressed everything I need. That way we can start with procurement. And so maybe we may, in the sense of if the commission, I'm not sure when the commission's meeting next, but it may be a fact that if we get a protocol to you next week and Lucas looks at the end of the week and said they're good, we can start procurement before the commission meets again, just so that we can start the process, because we'd like to get plantings installed this spring.
Okay. I mean, through the chair, I'm not sure that keeping this on the agenda throughout the summer is something that is necessary. Mark and I and Joe are working together, so.
yeah, I agree.
As long as we dot the I's and cross the T's on the plan, I think
absolutely.
we can move forward with.
Yeah, and if you need to bring it to the commission's attention, feel free.
Yeah.
Okay, and there were no questions from the audience? Okay, great, thank you,
Thank
gentlemen.
you so much. Have a good night.
Thank you.
You too. Okay, we'll move to the new hearings. 42 Greenwood Road, this is a notice of intent for a tennis court. Come on up. Gentlemen, the Hopkinton Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, April 11th, 2023 at 7 o'clock at the Hopkinton Senior Center, 28 Mayhew Street. To hear all persons interested in notice of intent filed by Harpreet Singh for the construction of a tennis court with associated site work. Location is 42 Greenwood Road, Assessors Map R7, Block 4, Lot 29. How are you doing tonight?
Good, how are you?
Awesome. You hanging out with Dad?
Yeah.
Very nice.
Actually, Mr. Chairman, Paul McManus from Ecotech with Mr. Singh, who you know, and this is his daughter who, if the commission would indulge, would like to kind of explain really why we're here.
Absolutely, that would be great. What's your name? again?
Pernaz Kaur.
Okay, very nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Dear members of the commission, my name is Pernaz Kaur and I'm a 6th grader at Hopkinton Middle School. I'm very passionate about tennis, and my dream is to one day represent both Hopkinton and the United States at the U.S. Open and other Grand Slam events. Recently, I was at a tennis academy in Florida training with the former coach of Pete Sampras. There, I was able to prevail against much older players, which gave me a lot of encouragement. In order to achieve my dream of playing at the pro level, I need to train 6 hours a day. However, currently in Hopkinton, we only have 5 tennis courts for 18,000 residents. Whenever I'm at the public tennis courts outside my school, it's a long way and often I go home without playing. This has had a negative impact on how much practice I'm getting. Even when we try to book courts at Westboro Tennis Club, they don't always have enough courts available, even for an hour. I need a lot more time with this sport, and the only way to overcome this challenge of not finding enough court time is to build a court in our backyard. I also want to tell you that we are a family that cares a great deal about the environment. We have 46 solar panels on our roof and generate most of our energy from the sun. According to EPA estimates, in the last 4 years, our home's use of clean energy has been equivalent to planting 600 trees, saving 80,000 pounds in CO2 emissions so far. As you can see, our home has had and will continue to have a positive impact on the environment. It is my hope that you will grant my family a chance to build a tennis court so I may fulfill my dream of becoming a professional tennis player. I want to make my community in Hopkinton proud of my achievements. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was awesome.
Very nice.
And that's a very, that's a great dream that you have. So let's talk about this.
Okay. Again, Paul McManus from Ecotech. So we were retained by the Singh family to delineate wetlands on the property. You can see I have here in green. Should I put it up here? I don't know what works best, but there's bordering vegetative wetlands here, highlighted in green. Existing house is here. There's a patio, driveways to the front, and there's the house area is flat. There's a significant retaining wall here with a significant drop down to this lower area in the back, which is an open mode area. So what's proposed is to take advantage of this relatively flat area, although some grading is clearly proposed back here. Obviously, a tennis court has to be quite flat. But there would be some fill put in, but they're able to go and by truncating the corner of the back area here to keep the entire court outside the 50-foot no disturb zone. So we have the wetland in green, 100-foot buffers here, and then the 50 and 25 are here. So there would be additional retaining wall required around the back in this area here, and a little bit on this side here. Again, it does, you can see that the topo here, these are 2-foot contours. There is a bit of a grade coming in the back. So one of the issues with this property, as I said, is because there's substantial retaining wall around the entire back of the house here. The only way to get vehicles to the back for construction is to come along this area. There's an easement. This is land of Hopkinton Area Land Trust, HALT. HALT has reviewed the NOI, reviewed the plans, the NOI, and is actually a signatory on the NOI. So one of the questions that Lucas Environmental had was, do we know that that's copacetic with them? And it clearly is. They reviewed it and signed the NOI. So as I said, the entire proposed work area is currently mowed. There's no clearing required to do this. We do show some plantings. The intent would be to construct a tennis court, which has a traditional tennis court fence around it proposed, and that the area outside would no longer be maintained. We do show some modest shrub plantings in there. Lucas questioned that. These folks are happy to do more, but the intent is to plant it with native herbaceous mix and some native shrubs, and basically to let that go. So we did get the Lucas memo of April 6th. If you'd like, I can run through that quickly. I think I touched on kind of the primary points, but I'm happy to real quick run through it point by point if you'd like.
Yeah, so Joe, why don't you touch on kind of the high points? I don't think we need to go through it bullet by bullet, just in the interest of time, but
Okay.
Yeah.
One of the items has to do with the delineation, which I was generally in agreement with, but it did appear that the wetland continues roughly in this direction and then cuts up along the tree line up into this area. So while it wouldn't impact any work within apparently 50 or 75 feet, it might extend the buffer zone onto the property.
Right, if I may, yeah, we stopped, we weren't really sure where the property line was. We stopped at the tree line there with the flagging. And that buffer zone might extend up here, but we have the buffer zone up to this point. The access to the work area would be from the existing paved driveway. So we show the only part that might be additional buffer zone would be the first few feet off the driveway, which again is part of the existing landscaping. So, you know, in terms of impacts to the buffer zone, I understand the point, but it really wouldn't change anything materially, I don't think, in terms of the filing. And you know, we certainly understand if the commission wanted to put in a finding that you know, the wetland continues undelineated off to the, I guess, be southeast, just kind of for the record.
Just a quick question, the easement, that's all lawn area currently?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I thought, I'll double check. One of the notes is also that regarding the site plan, there are no PIVs shown on the plan. Commission usually likes to see that, I think.
Yeah, that's fine. And again, you know, these folks would be agreeable. You know, the PIVs would really run along the fence line. I'm not sure what they would add, but if that's something that you think is required, then that's something that they would do.
And I think the other main point was with the height of some of the depth of the fill and the slopes, whether or not an engineer should stamp the plan. Some of those being about 6 feet.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. The wall is at its highest point, I think 6 feet, but it's high enough that it would, to get a building permit, will require an engineered stamped plan. But before seeking, you know, before spending the money to do that, you know, these folks wanted to come and talk to the commission first.
Okay, that seems
and get that sorted out. But there's no question that would be required in order to build it.
Okay.
That's, you know, building department would hold their feet to the fire on, sure. So I'm sorry, just to clarify something in your letter, you would question about the surface of the court. It is proposed to be a hard court, and that surface, the play area, the lined tennis court is highlighted here, but that hard surface would extend out to the fence, as is typical on a tennis court.
Yep.
So I just wanted to.
I think one of the other questions was, being a single-family house, it does not require stormwater management exempt. However, there's going to be a fair amount of impervious area on the site and built up right to the property line. So the commission may want to consider some information just to make sure that you're not impacting drainage on the adjacent lots.
Yeah, I think you folks provided the most germane piece of information there when you described the material out here is extremely dense and non-draining.
Yeah.
So I think as a practical matter, it's all but impervious already. You know, as you folks called out. So I don't think there would be a really material change. As you said, it's, you know, as a single-family house, it's well below the threshold. But
right. I think the question is whether or not the grading would change any. Which way is the court going to drain, and is it going to impact an abutting property?
Oh well, the slopes surrounding it obviously are not going to change, and it would you know, it would just shed to the perimeter, you know, which is primarily, you know, off this way, and it drains. This is 420, 22, 24. And then coming off this way.
Okay.
I think that's pretty much it. I think the other points he already touched on.
Okay. So, Mr. McManus, the area where the retaining wall And the additional fill is going, that's all currently grass area? Is that
Correct, right, it's grass, out, yeah, they show a tree line here, but that's really the drip line, it's open.
So that's like the 50 to 100 foot primarily?
Correct.
And
This is your 50. So there's
Yeah.
no, other than the plantings, there's no work proposed in the 50.
Okay. So you'll put the plantings in, and the intent is to let that go native?
Right.
So there won't be any kind of mowing or anything back there at all?
Yeah. No, we talked about that, and
Yeah, once the fence is there, you couldn't take any equipment back there anyhow.
Right, okay. Yeah, I would think to Joe's point, and I'll open this up to the other commission members for their input, maybe because we're increasing the impermeable, and I mean, I know it is very dense fill material out there currently, but a lot of the lawn area is going to become the tennis court, which is impermeable. So maybe if there's a way to perhaps, increase some of the vegetation in the 0 to 50 foot, buffer zone, or the 25 to 50 foot.
right, so this,
That kind of strip right in there.
I guess what I think would probably most quickly resolve that is just pick a density, so many feet on center. It's about, in response to the question, I scaled it off quickly. It's about 5,000 square feet. So if we could just, if we can decide on a density and do the quick arithmetic, we can come to terms on that one. And I talked to Mr. Singh, and, his answer was, whatever we need to do.
Okay, let me open it up to comments from the other commission members.
I just have a question.
Yep.
So the area where the new plantings are is currently lawn, right?
Correct.
And then the area where the tennis court's going is lawn, right?
Correct.
Okay. And then there's an area crosshatch that says area of minimal grading or gridded. What is that?
So that's an area that the folks drawing the plans wanted to make clear that no new contours, it's 2-foot contours.
Yeah.
So no new contours would show up on the grading, but
Okay.
they wanted to kind of be
It's close.
completely transparent that
Okay.
some change would occur there.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's good. All right, thank you.
Through the chair,
Yes, Kim?
I would just be remiss to the commission if I didn't mention that this site does have a history of work without a permit. Dawn had intercepted with Halt some work occurring in the back. There is a steep there's a tall, the backyard is kind of flat, and then there's a steep drop off, and then the wetlands are kind of topographically about 6 feet lower. So there's some photos. I mean, obviously I wasn't the agent at the time. We never kind of really settled. I know Mr. Syed let us know that some of that grading existed. So it's just been a little unclear. I'm not sure exactly where the extent of the lawn.
So I can explain.
Was,
So Dawn
yeah.
Dawn was there at our place, and it was established that whatever happened in 2008, 2006, 2008. We bought the house in 2016, so that was 10 years before we arrived. And so, it wasn't something that we did.
This was 2020 with Dawn.
Yeah, so at that time, we were going to build a court, and the commission intervened, so we stopped.
Yeah.
So we didn't do anything. And so we were told to file the NOI, stabilize the site. We did, and then here we are now.
So the chair, am I misremembering that there was supposed to be mitigation done by back in 2020 from the prior incursions? That this was supposed to go back natural?
I looked at the record, and from what I could understand, the requirement was basically to stabilize the area, because as one of the pictures show, well, you can see the machine up there. it was, you know, when these pictures were taken, it was obviously unstable. And my reading of it, and I wasn't there, I wasn't part of it, but my reading of it was that was the requirement. And I know this, you know, recently when we went out there, it is in fact stable.
Yeah, I do recall, and it's been a few years, but Halt had required some mitigation for the portion of there, because of that road that entered the property.
Oh,
The
yeah.
access came in from Halt's,
Yep.
and Halt,
Right,
found
that's-
out about that and then wanted that
Right, that picture
area
is,
restored right there.
right, that photo is looking kind of like that.
Yeah. And Hart gave us an easement after that, right? So it wasn't,
Who put that road in?
that was their pre-existing.
So, I mean, was it the prior owner, or was that Halt that put that in? It's not Halt.
I have no idea, because we bought the property in 2016.
So your boundary is to the left of the road in that photo?
No, that's our home. I mean, that's our boundary.
Right. But your property boundary is not on the right side of the road, right? It's on the left.
It is. Our property boundary starts on the right side of the picture, but it then cuts across diagonally towards the corner of the wall.
So some of the roads on your property, some's on...
Yeah.
Okay.
And now Hart's given us easement onto the rest.
Okay.
But presumably, when the work is done and back, if it's approved, then
What was that?
there won't be any more access through this area.
Even now, there's no access. There's no need, because the access can now come from our driveway rather than through that area. We want to leave it untouched.
Okay. Sorry, Kim.
So we did say in the, you know, this would be the construction access coming down through here, which obviously would have to be, you know, the erosion control barrier goes around it. Oh, and Lucas had suggested adding a silt fence with the compost sock, which is fine. But that, you know, so the erosion control goes around that access as well, and that, you know, part of the final stabilization would, of course, need to include that, because there will be, you know, it's not proposed to be changed in any way, but there would be, you know, vehicle and equipment access through there. So you can expect some disturbance.
Yes, Kim?
I guess my question is there any ability or willingness on the part of the applicant for a more substantial, we'll call it buffer zone restoration within 0 to 25 feet of the delineated wetland? I know that there needs to be fill to make the tennis court level, so perhaps, you know, some of that earthwork could be taken from that area and used to the fill area.
I don't understand the part about the fill, but we are proposing, and that what I was talking about, you know, for coming up with a density was for, you know, this entire area of, you know, 0 to 50.
Yeah, I'm just thinking topographically, you might have an area that's actually meeting the topography of the existing wetland if we're doing a little bit of excavation, kind of where this drop-off point is.
Well, I think, I mean, there's a pretty good, you know, they just label it boulder retaining wall, and, you know, it's probably an average of, I guess, 4 feet, you know, and a fairly abrupt transition. So,
Right.
At the boulder wall in the back you're talking about? There's a drop off there?
Yeah, like the,
yeah, this is 420 to 416, and this is 24 to 20. It climbs a little bit this way, but it's the same basic. Yeah, there you go. That's somewhat typical.
Yeah. I guess the other question, Kim and Joe, is, you know, if that's all fill material, I mean, how are those plantings expected to survive? You know, right?
Well, you'd want to put in a good root ball and some topsoil around it.
That's not where, to the right, that's not where the plantings are going to be, correct?
No, to the left.
You know, like up on the slope.
Is your house on the right of that photo?
No, on the left.
On the left of the
Yeah.
photo?
That photo, I would say, is looking like here.
So the plantings are going in with the existing gravel way there?
No, plantings are going, this area up here currently is a mowed lawn.
Yeah.
The whole area back here is mowed lawn. So from 50 to 100 essentially is proposed to be tennis court. From 0 to 50 is proposed to be planted. And all of that, and I say 0 to 50, it's actually not quite that because the wetland is at the bottom of the wall. So from the top of the wall, which would be, say 5 or 10 feet off the wetland to 50, is proposed up on the, I'll call it up on the shelf.
Yeah, so here's, this is from
There you go.
2021.
Yeah, exactly, right there where she's got the cursor.
Through the chair,
Yes, sir.
when this house was originally constructed, was there a PIB put in place?
We found no evidence of PIB out there currently.
Is it on the plans, however?
No, it wasn't, there was no stamp plan, unfortunately.
I believe there was a mention of a PIV on the plans. I can look at it right now.
Somehow that got removed from when it was occupied originally. and-
Yeah, we found no as-is
Older wall.
that was stamped by an engineer.
I think this is back.
This is the only one we have, which is a sewerage plan.
That was probably the 25 that was supposed to be. And they just, yeah, whoever initially developed it went to town.
Yeah, I think it's just showing erosion controls.
Okay.
But the
No,
applicant,
hold on.
yeah, sorry, go
Permanent
ahead.
encroachment barrier.
What's the date on that plan?
It's
It's old.
So what is it off the
1990s, I think.
50 or the 25?
It is off of the 50.
Is that the construction site
This
plan?
is from 98.
All right, so that's probably when it was built, I'm guessing, right?
This is for a septic from 98, and it looks like there's a permanent encroachment barrier at around
He's out there after
the 50.
Which actually seems to correspond to the wall. To the wall. I think that's the wall.
Are you currently on a septic? Are you currently on a septic system, or you
No,
have?
we have sewerage.
Yeah, okay, that's what I thought.
And just to point out, this plan, the actual house is substantially different than what this plan shows. For example, the well is somewhere else, and, right, so,
So it's not an as-built.
Nothing unusual
It's
there.
definitely not an as-built.
Through the chair, can I ask a
Yeah,
question?
sure.
Can you clarify, I'm kind of confused as to this access way, like what it is now, what's proposed during construction, and what's proposed permanently.
Can you get the current picture you just showed? It shows the access way. She had a great picture.
That was actually from 2021, but
Yeah, so that picture, whoops,
that's kind of what
that first one you had was perfect.
That's
Yeah,
it, right?
So that picture is, I would say the photographer was standing about here, looking this way. You can see on the right, just below her cursor there, you can see the wall. That's this point here. So you're looking down and just kind of catching this where it turns. So it's basically, when I went to the site, I parked on the street, walked down the driveway, and just walked down this area here around, because this is retaining wall here. This is elevated.
So that's all grass now.
Yeah, this is the wall. It gets higher as you come this way.
All right, so it's grass now,
Yep.
and now what's it proposed to be?
It's proposed to be just returned to that condition, down to this point, where from here back, this is proposed as the planting area.
So the construction equipment will go through, and then it'll be restored to
Correct.
lawn,
Restored in kind.
to like whatever.
Right.
But it's not going to be a permanent gravel. driveway.
No. And it's not proposed even for construction. It's, you know, it's not proposed to be upgraded in any way,
This is gravel.
but
Yeah, see, the actual, we won't even use this part. Behind the tree, there is a substantial, about 10 to 15 feet of space behind the tree, which is actually connected to our driveway. And that is a gravel road. So we would not even have to touch the grass.
yeah, I'm sorry, you're right, it does say gravel.
That's the area I thought was supposed to be restored.
Yeah, it shouldn't be required to be restored because it's just gravel.
I thought that was the area that was disturbed last time. With the whole thing was supposed to get all restored.
Hart was there, and they were talking about this area actually, what you see right
okay.
now. And even here, Hart's area is on this side of the tree. On that side is our area.
Oh, here's a good photo of Joe too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's very current, correct?
So the
That's
gravel,
what I,
the gravel area is the area right below the retaining wall there.
Yeah, right here.
Yeah, okay.
Kind of see the.
So will that remain gravel, or is that gonna be, what is that gonna?
It stays what it is.
well, it's kind of, I mean, it's not great topsoil, but it is, you know, it has a lot of grass in it.
Okay.
And we're happy to change that area if you like to. You'd like us to plant something else there, we can. It's not a problem.
I mean, I guess my initial thought was just that, like, now you've got this developed in the back, and that's just going to become this, like, driving back and forth. But I think if the PIB is installed, it should be extended. That goes off property within the easement area, probably where there's trees are, just so there's no more encroachment.
So right here, through
That's
here.
what I'm thinking.
So just to give you some context, the reason Hart gave us the easement was so we could go and repair the wall. It's a pretty substantial wall at the back, and it's falling apart. So they didn't want us to seek permission every time. So that's why they gave us, it's not really a driveway. We never use that.
Not until there's a tennis court in the back.
No, even
And nobody
that.
wants to walk all the way back
Even
there.
then, we have a stairs coming down, so yeah.
Yeah, but if we could extend the PIB so it goes into that area, Mr. McManus, just to, you know.
Sure.
And what was the requirement, Kim, every 50 feet with the medallions?
About 40 feet.
Every 40 feet? So it's not a medallion that we put in. We can get
Yeah,
them,
so it'd be, you know, here's the property line, so one right on the property line,
and then at
and then
40-foot
here,
increments.
you know, 40 feet coming along here.
Yep,
Would you want them along the whole run?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's typically what we require.
But where you're pointing right now is right over where the driveway is, so you can't possibly put it there. Or where this.
Yeah, that's very much the driveway.
Because in my mind, I was thinking on the far end of the driveway, so there's more encroachment. So it's very clear, like you just have this little.
Well, this is off property.
That's Hart.
It's an easement, though.
That's true. That's true.
So you should have permission to do that, and it protects their property
Yeah,
more
that's
so than what it
true.
is now.
So you kind of right there, is that what you're thinking?
Right, and I think that it helps too, because it shows their property versus your property, because we get those complaints too, where people are going on a trail and they wander, so.
Yeah, it's a good suggestion. Okay, and then Kim, I guess, with the density of the plantings, can we put a special condition in that, you know, the applicant consultant works with you to come up with the appropriate density and plantings?
Yeah, I mean, generally what I recommend is per the DEP guidelines, 8 feet on center was it 8 feet on center for shrubs or trees? 8 feet on center for shrubs, 10 for trees. Yeah.
I think that's reasonable.
So if we can put that special condition in. And then, you know, there'd be because of the questionability of the soil quality there, you know, I think the 3-year monitoring would be appropriate. And if they don't, I mean, well, it's typical, right?
For plants.
for the plantings.
Typically 2, we could do a 3.
That way there, if, they don't take in the soil conditions, then we can keep an eye on it and replace them if we need to. Does that make sense? That makes sense to the commission. What's that, Ted?
I have 2 questions.
Sure.
if I may.
Yeah.
I didn't understand the answer to what I think was Joe's question. Tennis courts are flat. Where does the water go? We're going to have a 10-foot high wall at the north corner, right? Is the water coming out of a spout at the bottom of that? Is it running off the court like a waterfall, 10 feet down, and then going where it goes?
It would sheet off. It would sheet off. It's proposed to be a block wall. This is actually...
Could it be sheeting off at fairly high velocity, given that it's dropping 10 feet straight down?
Well, this is grass, this is lawn around it, right?
No, it's all paved.
This is?
Oh, hard surface.
Why does that have to be a hard surface for the tennis court?
Because that's the way tennis works.
No, here's the tennis court, right? Or is
Right,
this whole thing?
this is where the ball is in play.
Yeah.
But players run around out here to hit the ball.
But this has to be, okay.
Anyway, so about the water,
So the water would sheet off, but the walls, these walls are never vertical. The blocks are always stepped.
okay.
There's also a drain behind the wall,
So,
correct?
right, and then there's, the walls are built so that water underneath can weep through, either depending on the design, either the blocks allow weeping between the blocks, or there's weep holes put in. I think on these types of walls, the design allows the water to just weep through. The water from the surface would come over, and it would spill over, but it's going to kind of bounce its way down along the blocks. This is, I use the term Versalock. That's a brand name, but that's essentially what's proposed here, if you're familiar with that. But again, they're always stepped out, as this shows.
Joe, does that concern you at all? A velocity of water, whether it has steps or not? I've seen waterfalls that are steps in the woods, and that water's moving pretty quick.
Yeah, but it's just like high school.
I guess it depends on if it's a very even sheet flow, maybe not too bad, but if it's concentrated in any one area, it may be an issue.
It could be an issue.
Yeah.
My other question, if I may, through the chair. I don't think we had a formal vote on a previous proposal. I think we had an informal discussion about a previous proposal. Is that true? Do I remember that correctly? About a tennis court on this property?
I don't know.
No, we can't.
All we dealt with was the road and cleaning.
Yeah, it was really stabilizing. That's what we met for. And then there was a question around PIB, which was essentially the sticking point, right? Maybe didn't know where it was. So what I was asked to do was to first plot the PIB properly before we could have a discussion.
Okay.
Yeah, there was never an NOI that was filed for the tennis court.
I thought that there was an informal discussion that got a generally negative response from us.
Yeah, there was the disturbance that the commission was made aware of at the site. That's what triggered, I think it was HALT actually, Kim, if I remember properly right. Yeah, so HALT found out that their land was being used to access the backside for the activity that was being cleared. So that's when Mr. Singh came in, and he was asked to stabilize the site, identify. There was a question of where the PIBs were. I think, again, it's been a few years, but I don't think we were able to determine that. But we wanted the site stabilized, and the intent was that he come in with an NOI for the tennis courts at a future date.
Okay.
Does that sound correct, Kim?
And I'm sorry, one last thing. Kim, what you've identified isn't maybe technically a PIB, but it seems what you just showed us a bit ago when I walked up and snuck behind you, it seems to be a version of a PIB?
There was a version of a PIB identified on a septic plan. Whether or not that plan was accepted by anybody, I'm not sure. It was just in our historic files.
On the plan you have right there next to you, that PIB, can you trace with your finger where you would guess it was? Or is that,
It was on the 50-foot consistent with the wetland delineation at that time.
okay.
That's part of the reason why this site has been so tricky to identify exactly where that PIB should have been, because I think the wetlands have fluctuated a little bit over time. And by the time, John got to the site, it was difficult to tell.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, Jeff, one last thing.
Yes.
I know that there's proposed adding plantings. Or is there removal? I know you said it's mostly grass where the court is. Is there a plan for removal of trees for construction?
2 trees.
Is that on the plans?
I don't,
There's one here.
yeah, there's, oh, there it is, yeah, 8, it's pretty hard to see, but see 8, if you can see where I'm pointing, that's 18-inch.
Oh, right there in
It's
the
hard to
middle of the
read.
court.
And then here, right on the edge of the court line, I can't read the dimension, but that's the other one.
All right. Thank you.
So, a pavement question, could this be done with porous pavement?
Could it be porous pavement? I think, given the nature of the fill that's out there, that would be difficult, because porous pavement requires...
Porous
basically
ground underneath it, yes.
Requires something to drain underneath, yeah, exactly. So it's, I'm not a porous pavement expert, but I do know that that's a real issue, is the water has to be able to go somewhere. So,
So, through the chair, kind of
Yes,
thinking
Jean.
of the water runoff, if there's a neighbor over to the left side, are we going to be causing problems when now we've got all this stormwater sheeting off and maybe going into a neighbor's property over here?
This is all lawn, right? This to the left of the court on the plan. So this is all lawn. So
Yeah, I guess I was thinking more there, but, okay.
over here, perhaps.
yeah, the grade through there is consistently to the north, which is the top on the page.
Okay.
Through the chair, can I
Yes.
just ask one clarifying question?
Yep.
So is the intent, because it's only the plantings shown here, but is the intent to let everything beyond the retaining wall go natural?
Correct.
I do agree with her. I think you're going to have some issues with the runoff, especially if it's not constructed correctly. It's just going to sit behind that retaining wall. But your engineer can figure that out.
Okay, so I think the special conditions are that, the plan needs to be approved by AP as it goes through the process with the building department.
Oh, it's actually kill us.
Through the chair.
I got
yes,
that.
Tim.
I feel a little uncomfortable
Sneaky
with
little
that,
stamp.
honestly. I'd like to have a P stamp on it before we approve it, personally. I mean, I'm not a voting member, but that's,
Okay.
I just think about, just for consistency and just to have it back us up, that a P has looked at this.
Yeah.
Could we have, that plan has to come, to the commission as a condition, that not only through the building department, which has to be done, but also, to the commission?
Well, I think the issue there is if the design needs to be changed for any reason, it's already been kind of baked through the NOI process, right?
I suppose, but I mean, all you would be approving would be the footprint, and the particulars of the block and the drainage that I talked about. I'm not sure, that's for the wall. That's
Right,
really the stuff that the
But I guess
engineers-
what I'm saying is if the design is inadequate, the footprint may need to be enlarged potentially, or the wall, a location changed potentially. And if that was the case, you know, if we close out the NOI, and we needed to do that, you know, there'd have to be an amended NOI filed, and you'd have to come back, re-notify. So I think it's a prudent recommendation that Kim has, that, you know, we have the PE take a look at it prior to closing. Carrie?
No, I would agree. I mean, because that's it. If it'll only get bigger. Engineer looks at it, I wouldn't be surprised if somebody tries to do a tiered wall or something. Or, I mean, if it was me, I'd put a BMP right here, but.
Through the chair?
Yeah.
How high is the proposed wall?
10 feet?
Doesn't that require?
6 feet, that's what he said.
Well, it's,
The top of the elevation is 426.
Back there it's 410.
It was 416,
460, yeah.
that's still 10 feet.
so the core is, here at the top of the wall, 26 to 22 here, 26 to 24. This is 26 to 20, so 6 feet in this corner here.
So-
See, TWBW is top of wall, bottom of wall.
So not
22.
enough,
So 6 feet is the max in this corner.
not enough to require an engineer stamp.
I mean, I would, I think, be more comfortable with Kim's recommendation, getting a PE to look at it. That way there, if the footprint needs to change, you know, we're not going through the process again, you know.
Through the chair, I agree. I'm not comfortable voting on this tonight, and if I were asked to vote, I would vote no tonight. I'd like to get more information and more reassurance that it'll work.
Yeah, so I think, you know, with the current proposal, I'm comfortable. I'm only speaking for myself. I think if we can get the, you know, the PE to sign off on the design and take a look at it, you know, I think that with the collaboration with Kim on the plantings, and then the PIB located along the 50-foot buffer zone, and we should be, I think we should have a permittable project.
Okay. All right.
Sound good to you?
Excuse me.
Yeah.
So we'll do the math on 8 foot on center, and you can actually put a number on the plan.
Sounds great.
Okay, and we'll continue out to the next.
Through the,
Yes.
Do you want to ask if there's any abutter comments?
Yes, any abutter comments? Comments from all the members of the audience?
through the chair, I have one more.
Yes.
I don't want to.
No, I think you're good.
I think one of us asked about this section here and whether that would be allowed to return to natural state. And I think the answer was yes. I wonder if there could be additional plantings there. If we are going to put all of this impervious surface within the 100 to 50, I feel like there should be as much mitigation everywhere else as possible. And I'd love to see it on the plans.
Okay, we'll include that in our math.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, can I say one?
Yep, go ahead.
I'm obviously, I'm the agent here, I'm not a voting member. I do think it's a permittable project. It is a significant amount of impervious and work in the 50 to 100. The topography back there is consistent with fill. The soils are indicative of fill area. I would just recommend to the commission to also be consistent with other recommendations that additional mitigation, you know, excavation of what could be previous fill is recommended. For me, that's what I would want to see. It's kind of some more substantial mitigation efforts back there, kind of bring that topography back down as much as possible in that original buffer area. That's just my feeling.
Yeah, so maybe take a look at, I mean, I don't know what the thickness of the fill is, Mr. McManus, but if there's a possibility of maybe removing some of that and using it, you know, in areas where you are planning to put fill material in.
Yeah, I mean, it's on the order of 4 feet. 20 to 16, 22 to, yeah, it's pretty much 4 feet all the way along.
It would be nice if it's possible, even if we could get like a 10 or 15-foot strip of vegetated buffer with the original native soils, you know, with plantings, and then kind of a gradual slope up to the court. I think that would be better. That would be a better vegetated buffer than plantings and fill and then a drop off.
But wouldn't that require removal of that? Like, in that boulder wall is kind of this.
That's what would essentially,
Yeah.
what I believe you're talking about is
Yeah.
essentially peel back that wall for some distance.
Yeah.
The challenge would be that how do you go? You would have to go below the wall because it's such a substantial. There's no access to go below the wall. In order to
You'd have to kind of pull it out and
Yeah,
then do the corpse.
Any equipment would have to go down at the bottom of the area to do that.
Well, they
couldn't
could do it from up top. You have an excavator come up top and then kind of pull it back, right?
I would have the engineer look at that. You know, it may not be, you know, you need so much room for your cord and all that, so that would be something the engineer could kind of explore.
Okay, we need to move on, so we'll continue this. I can get a motion to continue this to our next meeting, which is April 25th.
I'm happy to make that motion.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. All right, thank you.
We will,
Good luck. Thanks.
I'm not sure we
Happy
can
to make that.
accommodate
Jim
April
just make it
25th, but
happy.
we'll let you know.
Okay, yeah, if
No,
not,
yeah.
let Kim know and we can
Right.
send it to the next meeting.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My sixth grader couldn't give a speech like that.
That was very
It was a good
impressive.
speech. Gregory wouldn't be able to do that.
Okay, E.L. Harvey, 35 Parkwood Drive, an after-the-fact notice of intent for oil and hazardous material remediation.
Here, you want to pass that down?
Hello,
Pass it down.
Yeah, I just gotta read this before we get going. Make sure I have the right one. Hopkins Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, April 11th, 2023 at 7 o'clock at the Hopkins Senior Center, 28 Mayhew Street, to hear all persons interested in after-the-fact notice of intent filed by E.L. Harvey and Sons for oil and hazardous material remediation. Location is 35 Parkwood Drive, Assessors Map R17, Block 13, Lot 4. Good evening.
Good evening. So I am Lisa Irwin with Clean Harbors. I'm a licensed site professional, and this is Melissa Santiago with E.L. Harvey. And we submitted an after-the-fact notice of intent regarding a Mass DEP-approved immediate response action performed in response to a December 16, 2022 release. The release was approximately 10 gallons of hydraulic oil that was the result of a failed hydraulic fitting on E.L. Harvey's equipment at the 35 Parkwood Drive location. Oil spray impacted soil, pavement, a retaining wall on that bottom portion of the figure, and you can see the gray. That's the release area. It flowed with stormwater from a heavy rain event that occurred the same day as the spill, entered a downgrading catch basin labeled CB1 on the sketch. And the catch basin flows through a drainage line to what we ID as outfall 1. It's kind of hard to see on that sketch, but it's about, outfall 1 is about 25 feet north of the catch basin. There is a drainage swale lined with riprap that extends about 20 feet north to an area that is less channelized and widens. And that area is a bordering vegetated wetland with dense Phragmites stand throughout the whole area. On the far side, kind of more to the north, kind of to the left of this picture, is the highway. That's catch basin 1, and the outfall you can see right at the blue tape pretty much. You can see some of the rocks at the head wall. The fire department, Hopkinton Fire Department, did respond. It was fairly quick response. They helped to identify the outfall, and absorbents were deployed fairly quickly to, excuse me, to help secure the outfall. A hummock of vegetation and soil was beyond the outfall, which appeared to limit the migration of oil. The Mass DEP approved IRA included deploying absorbents, cleaning surfaces, and removing soil near the building, right there. Cleaning the catch basin, skimming drainage water, removing soil at the outfall. Clean Harbors notified the Conservation Commission regarding the IRA activities, and Clean Harbors was issued an emergency certification on the day that we ended up removing soil. We've removed, a limited amount of petroleum sheen was observed beyond the swale. It dissipated, so beyond where kind of the darker channelized area is. There was a sheen noted out in that area, but it dissipated on its own, and we did not try to contain it. It was a pretty light sheen. The absorbent boom and pads were placed all along this channelized area. On the night of the spill, we ended up skimming some water, and then we went back shortly after and removed some soil along the perimeter to address some oil that was occurring. After we used vacuum removal with a Cusco, we removed about 2 to 6 inches, a little bit deeper on the front side. And like I said, there was a hummocky area about 6 feet out or so, kind of right beyond that large rock on the right-hand side. And most of the oil was contained inside that area by a bit of a hummock of soil and vegetative debris. After removing the soil, which equated to about half a cubic yard or so, we collected soil samples for field screening, and based on the field screening, it looked like it was acceptable levels, approaching background, and we selected, we always try to bias what we do, and key locations of where impact would be kind of heavier. Those areas were targeted for the sampling, for field screening, and then for analysis, laboratory analysis. We selected a few of those, one of which was the highest concentration that we detected from the field screening. Those results show low levels that were well below the reportable concentrations. They were well below the risk standards. They're considered to be approaching background. And we conservatively always do assume, we just kind of assume without doing analysis to prove background. We just assume it's non-detectable everywhere we go unless we want to go that extra step and demonstrate what background is. Here it was all impacted, so you can't really tell what background was if you analyze, but we assume it's non-detect. This is an area that does receive runoff from that catch basin. It's pretty much just a straight shot. There is a loading dock delivery area right behind there, and that area,
Probably a lot of oil and,
well, minor drips here and there,
that runs down into that area.
So there's two loading dock areas there, and while I've been on site doing inspections, I've seen several trucks and deliveries, and it's an active location.
Yep. Okay.
So
10 gallons that was released originally?
That was the top off. Yep. Okay. So after they made the repair, they topped off the reservoir, and it took 10 gallons. So sometimes they can run low, but from what I see, it probably was consistent with about 10 gallons.
Okay.
We did maintain absorbance at the outfall. A final inspection was conducted on March 2nd, and throughout the time I was doing inspections, it progressively got better. One of the times I went out, the boom, I think I disturbed the boom before I started prodding around in the soil, and I really couldn't make a determination on whether the sheen came from a little bit of the absorbance or if it was from the soil. So anyway, with time, I did go out again on March 2nd, and there was no evidence of sheen. Despite disturbing soils, poking and prodding, I was pretty thorough. I myself went out, not a field inspector, and the soils, nothing produced a sheen. I gave our field service branch the approval to remove the boom, and that was done. And that completed our IRA response actions. And I began preparing a closure report for the site to satisfy the Mass DEP tracking number. And regarding our notice of intent submittal, Lucas, acting on behalf of the town, had a April 5th site visit where they noted the area wasn't seeded at the top to the right of the compactor. And a crew went out Friday and seeded it. So that should hopefully stabilize that area. I do want to mention there is a little swath of soil between the pavement and there. I mean, it's not a whole lot to prevent runoff, but we haven't seen anything run off yet. The area has been stable since we did backfill over the winter. Everything looks pretty good. There were no ruts. I didn't see any issues for sedimentation of the wetland, and it has been seeded since. I also, when I was out on Friday, I did, yeah, that's the sheen that you had taken a picture of, and I saw that and I got a little alarmed, but I went in and it breaks apart pretty platy, which is indicative of iron bacteria. So a natural biological sheen.
Okay. Anything else,
Thank
Joe,
goodness.
from your perspective?
No, I didn't see any erosion on the unseeded area either, but I just suggested that it be seeded. And as far as the plankton, I also dragged a stick through it to see if it flowed or if it broke up. And I was getting some flow. That's why I was a little bit concerned.
I saw that too, because, you know, it's interpretation, it really is. So most of it, there were places where it clearly broke apart. And then other areas, it did swirl a little bit. It's that gray kind of swirl. I went to the neighboring areas, so right to the, I should have delineated this better on this plan, but to the right where there's edge of pavement, it kind of is that semicircle. There's an outfall right there, a separate outfall that doesn't take runoff from where the release happened. So there's an outfall there. In a couple of places, there were similar sheens that behaved similarly, and also to the yeah, I sent videos. So this is, I identified rocks and everything. So this is this is the release area, and it looks horrible, but it's platy.
Yep.
That looks platy.
And then there was another video that I took of the neighboring area. This is the outfall to the east, and there's that sheen, which again, there were, see how it drags apart? It does break apart, and it doesn't coalesce like a oil. And I'm very confident with, with the amount of work that we did, the time, the amount that was released. I'm pretty certain that we remediated the site.
Okay. All right. Yes, thank you. That was a good overview. We appreciate that. And if you can just, when the IRA completion statement's put together, if you can just forward that to Kim.
Absolutely.
And then I'll just open up for questions from the commission.
I think it was an Emmy Award presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, questions, comments from the audience?
It was the video, wasn't it?
Yes.
I knew you'd like that.
All right, Kim, do we need to vote on this?
Yeah, I'm gonna need to issue an order.
So,
Close the NOI.
so was it, so it's gonna be what, an after the fact NOI?
After the fact order, just close an issue.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we can close an issue and after the fact order.
So
Get a
moved.
motion and a second, please.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay. Phosphorix LLC, 35 Parkwood Drive. This is a notice of intent for egress changes in utility work. Hopkins Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, April 11th, 2023 at 7 at the Hopkins Senior Center, 28 Mayhew Street. Hear all persons interested, notice of intent filed by Elm Street Capital for the, actually filed by followed by Phosphorix for egress modifications, utility work, and associated site work. 35 Parkwood Drive, Assessors Map R17, Block 13, Lot 4. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. For the record, my name is Doug Hartnett, Principal at High Point Engineering, representing Phosphorix. With me this evening is Nick Kondek, our design engineer with High Point. Bill Culleton with Addison Young, who's the owner's project manager representing Phosphorix.
Good evening.
And Victor Galvani with 35 Parkwood Realty LLC, the property owner. And so that constitutes our project team here this evening. The notice of intent application specifically has to deal with the construction of pad-mounted mechanical equipment in the front of the building site between the front of the building and Parkwood Drive, as well as an egress stair that's required by code coming from the basement of the building to the exterior grade elevation. Tim is bringing up just a color site plan to make it a little easier to read. A little bit of history with this. So Phosphorix is a tenant currently, and will be taking more space and renovating the space within the building. Phosphorix is obviously in the middle of permitting so that they can get their building permit for the renovation work. Given Phosphorix's operations within the facility, it's necessary to upgrade their HVAC equipment, which requires the placement of pad-mounted chillers in front of the building, as well as an upgrade and expansion of the emergency power generation requirements. Sorry, that's fine. And then lastly, as I said before, in order to be able to renovate the basement of the building and utilize that for operations, it's required to create another means of egress, which is, if you're looking at the plan, Parkwood Drive is to your right, obviously. The primary access driveway to Plan South is to the parking lot in the rear of the building. The second driveway access you see to the plan north of the building, that's to the loading dock that you just saw in the previous hearing. This project has 3 approvals that are required from the town of Hopkinton. We have the notice of intent for buffer zone activities with the Conservation Commission. We have also a special permit with the Board of Appeals for the placement of the mechanical equipment within the front yard setback. There's mechanical equipment that exists there today. And because of the placement of existing equipment and the way the building layout is, it's the logical position for the equipment to be placed is in the front yard. And therefore, the Board of Appeals, we're seeking a special permit for basically installing a more non-conforming more non-conforming structure within the front yard. And then lastly, we have a petition with the planning board under minor site plan review, given the scope of the project. So we're in front of the Concom tonight. We'll be speaking with the Board of Appeals tomorrow night, and then I believe our planning hearing is in the next week or so.
Okay.
As we said, so our wetland consultant is Ecotech. I saw Mr. McManus was here. John Rockwood was our consultant from Ecotech, which is a wetland delineation. You can see in the light green, wetland areas delineated. We're included the areas around the loading dock pavement area to the north, the wetland area to the south of the main driveway access into the site, and then also the off-site wetland area that has buffer zone implications for the front of the property across the street from Parkwood Drive. As I stated, the scope is pad-mounted equipment. The largest pad is a approximately 15 by 52 concrete pad with mechanical equipment mounted on top. That's identified in the plan as CH1. We have a second smaller pad for the generator that's identified as G1. That's approximately about 5 by 10. And then you have the egress there on basically the southeast corner of the building. And that's approximately about 150 square feet. In order to comply with the requirements of the Planning Board and the Board of Appeals, it was important that the project provide a level of screening from Parkwood Drive, and you see that in the color plan and the vegetation that we're proposing. So if you were to go out there today, there's actually a mound that had been built when they had done the original construction of the property that provides some screening of the existing equipment. What we're doing is we're taking that mound and essentially shifting it from its position against the building, closer to the building, and bringing it closer to the street to level out the area for the concrete pad. What this image represents is an elevation post-construction that we anticipate that the view will be from the street, and this is really for the benefit not just of the commission, but the Board of Appeals and Planning Board as well. So what you see in the foreground are the berm and the plantings. What you see in the background between the plantings and the building, a straight line that's somewhat grayish between what appears to be a spruce and a white pine, that's the height of the mechanical equipment. And then you see the two white pines to the plan left. In that location, that would be the location of the generator. Feel so? If we could go back to the plan, Ken. What we did is we strategically placed the equipment to maximize the distances from the wetlands and try to get them as far out of the wetland buffer areas as we could. Essentially, the impacts as it relates to the buffer zone include a sliver of the chiller pad to the north, the egress stair to the south, the planting areas in order to provide the screening to the east. And other than that, there's no activities located or proposed within the actual resource areas themselves. There's no activities located within the 50-foot no-touch area. All the activities are essentially proposed within previously disturbed areas, but now are currently lawn, if you were to drive out there and look at it. Phosphorus intends to start construction in the next 60 days, 36 days, Bill?
Correct.
And so in order to accommodate the interests of the Wetlands Protection Act, we are proposing a straw wattle, snake straw wattle around the perimeter of the down gradient portions of the limit of work. In order to provide erosion control, we're proposing silt sacks within the catch basins immediately adjacent to the limit of work area. And we did receive Chris Lucas's memorandum on some comments, and I'd like to address those now, unless you'd rather read it into the record first. I'm not sure how you would like to do that.
So we have our rep from Lucas here.
Oh, okay.
Joe, do you want to kind of go through your comments and then?
Oh, yeah, I just had a few comments.
It was fairly minor.
I did review the entire delineation. There was only one location where I recommended that the line be bumped up, and it looks like they've revised that on this plan. The green line is an adjusted line in the location where I had recommended it, and that looks appropriate. I also noted there was a large leaf pile just upgrading to flag A2 that recommended should probably be removed. It looks like landscapers had been dumping leaves here for a while. There was a comment in the filing that the project is exempt from the stormwater management regulations, and we just would like clarification on why that is. And then a minor comment that the plan that we reviewed didn't have the colors required by the bylaw. But that was it for my comments.
Okay. So I'll address individually.
Sure.
First of all, John went back out to the site after we received your letter. He reset a new flag for your direction in the comment letter. Swing ties were pulled. Those were plotted on the plan. That's what you see here on this. We agree about the leaf pile, and we'll ask the property owner to also talk to the maintenance contractor to make sure that they're not disposing of debris within those areas that are of concern to the board. As for the stormwater management, we made that statement. It had more to do with the town stormwater bylaw and not the thresholds by which the project would have to comply with that. But understanding board's concerns for projects like this, we typically find that the pad locations are somewhat de minimis in terms of their impervious cover footprint as it relates to these larger commercial properties. But we have done in the past, and we could propose in this case, a gravel infiltration trench around the perimeter of the pad in order to be able to address any concerns that the commission may have regarding that. We've done it in the past. Some boards require it, some boards don't. Again, as a small impervious footprint, I believe it's about 1,000 square feet all in. But that is something that we could propose if it was to the board's, if the board so desired it. It's not feasible to do drainage for the egress stair. The egress stair comes from the ground floor. The ground floor is buried up in the southeast corner of the building. And we need to be able to drain the bottom stair. So we have a scupper drain coming from the inside wall of the egress stair, and it ties to the drainage system direct. There's a drain pipe that extends. You can see the two catch basins in the south driveway. That drain extends due north, essentially parallel and slightly adjacent to the chiller pad, and eventually makes its way to the rear of the loading dock area and discharges to the wetland. And you can see that drain pipe shown in red dash as to where that outfall position is.
Okay. Right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the gravel apron seems reasonable to me, Kim.
Yeah, I would respectfully ask the property owner if they might be amenable to any other small stormwater improvements. I know that this site is kind of an oldie. It was constructed before the modern stormwater regulations. So are the catch basins deep sub-footed at this point?
We've not inspected the system. The first phase was 1980s, so likely not.
Yeah.
Second phase was, I believe it was early 90s, mid-90s, so possibly at that point. Speaking for the owner, we could go out and look at the catch basins and see if they are. And we don't want to get into replacing catch basins.
No,
that seems a bit invasive, but.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I think, maybe perhaps looking at like a rain garden or something, kind of in the area, where they're putting the berm in there, perhaps some type of rain garden. I don't know, Kim, where an appropriate location would be, but.
Yeah, I think just, the town is really trying to move towards low impact development and small improvements, something small, anything that maximum extent practical, understanding that the scope of this project is limited.
Well, on the rain garden discussion, because this has such limited use, there's no activity on it, there's no driving on it, there's no vehicles, there's no pedestrians, it's a pad with equipment. The benefits of a rain garden adjacent to that in terms of water quality improvements and so forth, I don't see that really being something that would be a significant benefit in terms of water quality improvements, because you're not essentially having, call it dirty water, running off the pads to begin with. But to that point, we're happy to go look for other opportunities within the site itself that could be cleaned up, if you will.
I think that would be valuable given kind of the age of the infrastructure out here.
Yeah, again, we're not looking for anything too invasive, just something kind of like an incremental improvement. You find something that, is reasonable, I think. I think that would be appreciated. Okay, questions or comments from the commission? I think it's pretty straightforward. Questions or comments from the audience? Okay, so Kim, you want to continue this out to the next hearing? If you guys can just take a look at that. I think other than that, we should be good to go on this.
Great. Okay. We can work with Kim direct in terms of refiling. We probably want to get through our next meetings this week and early next week with planning. Just make sure there's nothing that's going to come out of that. So that if there are comments from those boards, we can incorporate that in the final plan set, and that'll be for record.
Yeah, our next meeting's the 24th, was it?
Okay.
25th. So I'm going to motion to continue this out to the 25th.
So moved.
A second? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay.
Thank you.
And if you need to continue it beyond that, just let Kim know. All right, great. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
What's that?
Did we ask for comments from the audience?
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, they brought quite the party with them. Really?
That would've been nice.
That's why they have all that.
So
fun.
Elm Street Capitol, 86 Elm Street, this is a notice of intent for a new industrial building. The Hopkinton Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, April 11th, 7 o'clock p.m. at the Hopkinton Senior Center, 20 Street. If all persons interested in a notice of intent filed by Elm Street Capital LLC for the construction of an industrial building with associated site work. The location is 86 Elm Street, Assessors Map R23, Block 10, Lot 0. Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening.
Sorry for the
Chairman,
wait.
members of the commission.
No, you look at the new plan until we give me the old one.
So while you're getting situated, for the record, my name is Michael Dryden. I'm a senior project manager with Allen Engineering. Joining me is Spencer Slotchy, Elm Street Capital LLC, owner applicant. I believe, Kim, you do have the PDF plans. I also have an aerial that we had prepared for before the planning board as well, so I thought I'd bring that. I think it tells a nice story about the site. So that is there to supplement my presentation.
Okay.
Is everyone generally familiar with Elmwood Park and its location? A very prominent site in terms of its location at the interchange. Just note here that north is down to the right of the page, which can be a little deceiving. So access light is
Right,
just,
yeah, so
just off the page.
Putnam Pipe is in the top
Yeah,
section.
the top
there.
right is Putnam Pipe.
So we
correct.
have bought the property we were just talking about from the last,
Yes.
35 Parkwood. So
Right,
that large parking lot. Yep.
So it's a 7-acre site outlined in red. There are 5 existing buildings there today. My client actually owns a 6th building to the left there. That's actually on a separate parcel. So we're talking about 5 buildings on this site, entirely within the Industrial B zoning district. The wetland resource areas do not appear on this plan because they were delineated after this plan was plotted. So Goddard Consulting went out and delineated wetlands on the site. There are wetlands on the site, which are just off the page to the bottom. There's a drainage way, if you will. There's a wetland, so if you're able, Kim, to just pan down a bit. Yeah. So off to the lower right, there's a BVW, and then you see the drain pipe connection, this bank. It's a long linear system that's clearly man-made. We are clearly outside of the buffer zone with our proposed project. You can see the light dashed line there. The resource area that does come into play is actually off of the property within the 495 right-of-way. You see that delineation there.
Yep.
That is bank. I was a little bit surprised that it was a wetland. Kim brought this to our attention. I looked at this very early in the process. I saw the concrete apron, and you know, I've been doing this a long time, but we learn lessons all the time. So I didn't think that was going to be classified as a wetland, and it is, clearly, according to Goddard. So that's why we're before you this evening. The proposed plan, this is the grading and drainage plan. It's an 8,500 square foot building. It is proposed in an open area. You can see the development superimposed on the aerial. It's a wide open grassed area. We're not proposing to remove one tree, no understory brush of any kind. The topography is very gentle in this location. The proposal respects the 50-foot no-touch. As you can see, it's probably difficult to see on this plan on the screen, but there's a dashed 50-foot wetland buffer that we've respected. Access to the project is via a 24-foot wide access driveway that you see extending from the existing perimeter drive. There's a 20-foot expansive pavement to the left of the building. We didn't originally have that on the plan. The fire department wanted access around the building, so we had to add some additional impervious. Unfortunately, in the front of the building, there are 11 parking spaces and enough room to maneuver an emergency vehicle as well as to accommodate access to the loading docks. The project also entails a sewer pump station. Difficult to see on this plan, but in the footprint of the proposed building is a dashed box. That is an existing septic system that is being removed. That system right now serves the building at 88C as well as the Putnam Pipe building. So that system will be removed, and then the three buildings, Putnam Pipe, 88C, and the new building will flow by gravity to a pump station. You can see the shape sort of just to the right. Yep, right there. That is a pump station, and then it will be pumped out to Elm Street via a force main.
Okay.
In terms of stormwater management, we are before the planning board for major site plan approval. Data Group is reviewing, or has completed their review, I should say, of the drainage system. It's designed in full compliance with Mass DEP stormwater management standards in terms of TSS removal, peak flow mitigation, all the required standards. So I did provide to you, Kim, today a copy of that. We are scheduled to be before the planning board one last time later this month, and we have reconciled all of the stormwater comments. So we do feel that we're poised for that approval from the planning board later this month. I also received the Lucas Environmental correspondence. I did provide written responses to that. I'm happy to walk through that, however you want to proceed, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, Joe, why don't you kind of walk through your no more salient comments?
I did look at and there was only one spot where I felt the flag was a little bit low. That was the flag GC 210. It was about 10 feet low. Not significant, just bumped the buffer zone up a little bit in the area going to work.
Excuse me, who was the little kid I just saw?
I'm sorry. When I close stuff on my primary.
So one of the other items I observed, although not
you missed it, man. Come on.
in the wetland that the buffer zone affects the proposed project, near flag W2 to W6, there was significant leaf dumping, at least 4 feet deep. It looks like it went into the wetland. So Commissioner might consider some remediation of that. Minor issue, the plan that we reviewed did not have the colors required by the checklist. And there was a gap in the erosion control barrier. Proposing that. Along the southern limit of the site.
Was there a reason for the gap?
So it's just in order, in terms of the flag, what I did, just in the event that we're hoping that the commission, if you're inclined to approve the project, I wanted to provide a sketch that shows the relocation of that flag and that it does not affect the development. In other words, we would have no work within the 50-foot no touch. It really has no bearing on anything.
Okay.
So that's easily addressed. The landscape debris, I did see that in the field. I would respectfully suggest that removing it is logistically difficult with the fencing that's there. We certainly understand that the commission may want to impose a condition for no further dumping, but with the fencing, I think it may actually be more intrusive to go in there and try to remove it. We would certainly cease any additional landscape debris being dumped there.
Okay.
The colors on the plan, I believe they're all colored here. Perhaps just the electronic file that you had didn't have them. I was a little puzzled by, quote, the gap in the erosion control. I didn't quite know where that was. And I studied the plan pretty hard. Do you mean an actual gap, or are you suggesting an extension of it?
Well, I have to admit, some of the comments on this were written by others in our firm.
Okay, I don't believe there's any
I
gaps.
did the field work.
Yeah, so if you study this plan, you'll see that it's a solid barrier.
Okay, if
Yeah.
there is no gap, then I am, I'll withdraw that.
That's quite all right.
Okay. So I think it sounds like the comments were addressed. I just had a kind of a general comment, given, and this kind of goes along the same lines with the comment we had at the applicant prior to you, given the age of this development and, when the stormwater infrastructure was put in place, that kind of coupled with the scale and scope of the project, is there any potential opportunity for enhancing some of the, stormwater infrastructure here, or maybe perhaps some LID, opportunities that could be considered? I just wanted to throw that out there.
Well, we would certainly prefer not to try to, retrofit any additional stormwater controls, but in terms of the LID, two of the boxes that are checked here, clearly, as I mentioned, there's no vegetation being removed. And also, there's a very sizable infiltration system proposed in the front of the building, which does infiltrate much more than the prescribed volume that infiltrates clean roof runoff. So we're doing quite a bit with this particular project. We did not contemplate trying to go, look for areas of improvement in the site, to be perfectly frank with you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just wondering if there's an opportunity to maybe, in the area where the construction is happening, maybe put some country swales in, or rain gardens, or something along those lines. That was kind of my thinking. But let me kind of table that for now. You guys can think about it, and I'll open up to questions and comments from the other commission members.
To the chair?
Yes.
I just had some clarification questions. I know you sent me the beta report a few hours ago, Mike.
Sure.
So I know that the development was struck under the 1 acre threshold. Is that still the case? Is there going to be an application for stormwater with planning board? I know this is heavy life.
This is a little bit of a sore subject.
I have to ask.
But I will clarify.
Okay.
So we designed the project initially well below the 1 acre.
Okay.
I mentioned the fire department made us add a 20-foot emergency access. That put us very close to the bubble, if you will. Mm-hmm. We looked really hard where we could pull the limit of work in. We kept it just under an acre. The planning board's consultant refused to accept that. There was quite a bit of back and forth. We said we're under it. The planning board consultant thought that we couldn't actually make that work. So we finally, after several meetings, just decided to concede. So we did file a stormwater report.
Okay.
And that's why you're probably reading through this, seeing echoes or hints of the stormwater report, because it has been filed. This is the 5th letter issued by Beta, and they've been asking for this stormwater all along. We've been saying we don't exceed the threshold. So that's why we kept saying NA, NA, NA. So finally, we did submit it, and the comments for that are also reflected in here. So we'll be before the planning board later this month to wrap up the site plan as well as the stormwater management permit.
Okay, so Beta has already reviewed your submission of the...
Correct.
That's included in that?
Yep, so we submitted the stormwater permit simultaneously with this revision of the plans.
Okay.
Yep. So if you look in here, Kimberly, you'll see Town of Hopkinton stormwater management regulations.
Yep, yeah, sometimes they comment it when
Yep.
it doesn't exist, yeah.
And in particular, SW6, you can kind of see the history, that long history.
Yeah, and that's what I was looking at. Okay, perfect. So through that stormwater permit, the planning board will consider, would have asked you to consider low-impact development, best management practices.
They did, and we explained exactly what I just explained to the commission. Yeah.
Okay. So the planning board will also be kind of evaluating under the context of their stormwater permit, whether the applicant meets the standards for the full, whether they adequately evaluated.
All right. Questions or comments from commission members? No.
Oh, sorry.
Yep.
There are also, I think I'm dangerous, so I'm just going to ask you a question. I know that there's also commentary in the beta letter about you don't have a specified tenant yet.
That's correct.
So the planning board has questioned whether the tenant may have a land use with a higher potential pollutant load.
The planning board did not. The
Okay.
peer review consultant
Okay.
continues to do so.
So that would also be implications under the Massachusetts stormwater checklist.
Correct.
So I guess I would just want to make you guys aware that we would probably also have similar conditions in our order.
Totally fine. That's
Okay.
exactly what we told the planning board. There's no manufacturing, there's no hazardous waste material. The uses will be very consistent with the other uses there today. So the planning board said that they would like to condition their approval. We said no problem.
Okay.
If the commission would like to do that, there's no opposition.
Okay. And then the last one is we'll probably have a condition as well for receipt of the slip before
Sure.
we get started.
Yeah. That was another reason why we tried to avoid 1 acre, because not only is it a local issue, but now we have to submit to the feds. So the project sort of grew a little bit more than we had anticipated, but what we did, since we were just under 1 acre and we had to concede to filing as if it were over 1 acre, we called it 50,000 square feet, just to give us a little room to work instead of 43,560, which is 1 acre.
Okay.
So that's what's reflected on the plans before you.
This would be the SWIP as a special condition, Cam, and then the O&M plan as well, right?
We already gave you the O&M
Yep.
as
Okay.
part of the drainage report.
Okay.
And we're happy to give you this one. We have to prepare it for the board and the feds, and we're happy to give it to you as well.
Okay. All right, I think, should we just continue this out till we get this closed out with the planning board, do you think, or?
It's a little chicken and egg,
Yeah.
but
I think we can defer to the planning board kind of.
we usually deal when there's a stormwater permit in play.
If I could, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
that was the reason I did provide you with their comments. I mean, the stormwater is clean. We've addressed
Okay.
all of their comments. So
Yep.
I'm not trying to force any decision on the commission, but
No, I
in the interest of time, we're very confident after 5 letters and 4 months back and forth
Got it.
that we've addressed everything.
Okay, if I can get a motion to close and approve the notice of intent with the special condition. Yep.
Comments.
Oh,
I am happy to hear that Beta does insist on certain items, because I'm very familiar with that, and I'm tickled that it's not just me.
No comment.
So, motion to close and approve the NOI with the identified special conditions.
So moved.
So Ed in a second, Jim?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right.
Thank you very much for your time. We appreciate
Appreciate your time.
Good luck. Okay, continued hearings, this is Trail 0 Wilson Street, notice of intent for a continuation of notice of intent for drainage improvements. Good evening, Mr. Demus.
Yeah. No, huh?
Felt like when I carried it out of town hall that I was, too.
Thank you.
Just in case you can't see these, I put these on 11 by 17. Kim, I pretty much have the exhibits you currently have. I just thought it would be good to start with where this project started, just to help clarify why we're where we are. Kick ass, So, good evening, Peter Beames, engineer and design. Thank you. What I'm going to start with is where you folks basically had left off with this project in the original permit. Okay, because the last little piece of this is to tidy up this offsite improvement. So it's best to kind of start with where this whole thing started. And Trails was an 80-unit development that had these various stormwater improvements, scattered about the project. And I think we've touched each one of them with some new improvement, which you recently reviewed at your last meeting when we were online. and you approved that. Now the focus is this off-site piece. And I wanted you to see what had originally been approved, which was Basin 1 here with a discharge to an intermittent channel that was along the lagoon driveway. And then there's this natural wet area that extended to the northern property line, basically, of trails, and it just ended. And then that, too, had an intermittent channel that came down and met up with this wetland system that was, again, flagged and part of that. And then they didn't even show the culvert going off-site. So it's those other pieces now that we're dealing with this proposal that's before you tonight for these off-site improvements. And in the pictures that I've given you, it shows pretty much what is there. So today, it's basically a riprap embankment that comes from trails, because when they cut in the lagoon driveway, they basically made a riprap embankment. And that happened sometime in the 90s without review or approvals. That water body that we talked about, which is the intermittent stream channel, comes down and was diverted, because I believe that it always went to the east, was diverted with a culvert that brought it back to the west, down to the treatment plant driveway, which is to the west. That's the same one. This is the culvert that's located east of us, which is where the box culvert is, and that's where we want to head. And that's what this proposal is before you.
Yeah, that's further down towards Ashland.
Ashland, that's correct. Yeah. And then this is that then culvert that crosses the roadbed there. And it's still Wilson Street here. So everything up to end of terminus of Wilson Street is Hopkinton land on the south side. On the north side, it's Ashland. And that extends basically past that lagoon driveway, pretty much where these culverts are. So that's all Hopkinton. This is what happens when the water leaves trails today, coming down that riprap embankment. This was a 2.5-inch rainstorm. What we're trying to do is design for 8.7 inches of rain, not 2.5 inches of rain. So you can see what's happening, with riprap that's not in a managed channel in a 2.5-inch rainstorm, and just think about what it would be, 3 times that. And then this is the culvert, which is on Ashland land. Ashland did approve our order of conditions, but that's the receiving pipe for the culvert that goes underneath Wilson Street. And Ashland did approve that improvement. So then that goes to this sheet. So I'm just going to put this kind of down to get you off of that history. We go to this. So the proposal here is...
Can I have a quick question? So when you say Ashland approved the culvert, the replacement of that culvert?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
It's not going to be replaced. We're going to remove it, and we're actually making an open channel.
Okay.
So totally different approach. If you look really closely in the picture, you'll see it.
Okay, just wanted clarification on that. Yep, thank you.
So the Hopkinton, maybe I'll start with Ashland. There's a little bit of improvement we're going to do down here at the treatment plant driveway. This is the culvert removal and constructed channel. That's, again, 100% Ashland. This is land owned by the town of Ashland in the town of Hopkinton. So we're advancing a notice of intent with the commission for work in Ashland, in Hopkinton, owned by Ashland. Because again, the municipal boundary is here. So when I mentioned you on the green here, that again, the wetland limit came down and ended right here. And this is that riprap embankment. So what Beta and we've been challenged with is how do we get from here to there and put this in a channel that's going to do a lot better than that. And it's been challenging because the calculations tell you one thing, and from the field, we're looking at what it does and it's saying, boy, yeah, it's challenging because this is very steep coming down here. Yeah. So original calculations that we did in the program that we use is telling us to do a 2-to-1 channel, which was going to really have a much greater impact along this whole zone. When I first filled out all the forms with Kim, the impact area was much wider. We were always trying to minimize that. So we went back, Beta had come back and said, look, let's look at 1-to-1 with that channel. and it is much better. So that's what we're proposing here, is basically a one-to-one bank channel with a 4-foot bottom that will carry the water from this channel point where the wetlands end. So we're going to do work right up to the edge of the resource area, but put in a water conveyance system now that can bring that water properly to the edge of wetlands at the culvert. As part of this, can we advance this slide? We're not just going to do that work and make it an engineering project, because that's been disturbing to me this whole time. We're going to try to put back something so it looks like we're sensitive to this footprint area that we have to work. So we're going to bring in what I call more like a transition plant material. It's not a wet plant material, because these aren't going to have really a wet foot, but they're going to be in an area that's going to have some hydrology. And so we're proposing, I had inkberry, we had winterberry. I'm just trying to remember all the plants. There's a list of them. And we try to just mix those out through that area, so that when you come back out here and you look at this, it's something that needed to be there this whole time. It should have been there before this project even got this far. It wasn't there, and we're putting it back where it needs to be. Town of Ashland has agreed to allow us to do that work in that area. Their channel here, where the water comes down off the lagoon driveway, will still be picked up and carried through. The culvert, the existing culvert here that comes across, that is going to stay. In the event that we get some storm that's over the 100-year storm, because the 100-year storm will convey through this. But if we were to get something that exceeded that, there is the ability for that channel to then take water back. I don't see it being a high-frequency event, but if it did occur, it will work and it will function. We're not going to touch the rest of that infrastructure. That's the culvert. This is that water pipe that's just below that corrugated pipe that you see there. That's in Ashland, but that's going to all be encased in concrete to protect it. That is an active water main. It's withstood, obviously, some very low temperatures. It's been exposed for years. And we just had that extremely cold day, if you recall, back in, was it February? It was the coldest day we've had in a long time, and there's no issues with it, because it's got a lot of water running through it.
So those stone check dams that you have, kind of in the bed there, what is that? Right in there.
No, those are contours. So we're going from 324 to 311. So we're dropping 13 feet across this whole channel. Most of that drop is occurring here. It's a 10-foot drop to get from the wetland limit to the bottom of that slope. And this was the most challenging part because of the steepness of that. It's 40%. So we actually elongated it a little bit, so we're at around, I think it was like 30.
Okay. So how are you going to prevent like the scouring of
Correct. That's this channel that has to be constructed here, and we're using a riprap. We had originally looked at trying to use a rounded stone. I think if you recall in our original plans, we really wanted to try to make this channel look like it's been there. The calcs just didn't support it. You have to have an irregular stone. So again, Beta did all the review on this, and this was the conclusion, is that we need something that's going to support a 100-year storm event, and we're designing on the 100-year storm event that we're anticipating in the future, not looking back at the past where this project was originally designed.
Yep, okay. And I know that Beta did provide that comment that the engineering is complete, for this phase of the project.
And there's one more sheet, there's 3 sheets to this set. Ashland engineer peer review took advantage of our office because we've done a lot of survey work out here now that hadn't been done when we started this. We found things all over the place. And there's monuments. We found old town bounds out in the woods. My son's become a very good land surveyor through this whole process. And they asked us to tie all this down so they can kind of come out here and jump on our work now. So that was part of the deal with, not CMG, I'm trying to remember the acronym, GCG. We had to provide this tie sketch plan so any contractor can come out here and do the work. I'm anticipating using the Trails contractor, DeVincent Construction, to do most of these activities here.
Okay.
So I just thank you for your patience.
Yep.
It's been a long road to get here, but I think one good thing that's come of this is, had it never been for those rain events, we may not have ever had to have these meetings, But what we did find was that the infrastructure was not sufficient to support the project, and that's what we've done, is made the infrastructure more supportive of the program.
Okay, great, thank you. So Joe, Kim, did you have any comments or questions from Mr. Bemis?
I was not asking,
Okay. Right, it's engineering,
so
so.
it was Beta primarily. I did go out and take a look at, well, I've been out to that area a lot. I jumped in there with my auger, kind of poked around as well. It's an area that historically has seen changes. There's been a lot of different ad hoc movement down there.
Unpermitted
I don't disagree with you. I said that to you, Kim, is that
Yeah.
either there's no lagoon driveway or there is a lagoon driveway, and we have to decide where we go from there. So it's there, and there should have been some permits, both because there was a resource area. So you'll never get a disagreement from me. Wetlands don't just go like this and stop. They don't stop at property lines.
Yeah. So, it's a matter of, does the commission feel that this is, given the history and the surroundings and the development that's occurred, does the commission feel that overall this is an improvement? Is kind of the question.
Vast improvement.
Yeah.
I think so. And there's a second phase of the project that still has to happen. And presumably we'll be working with Mr. Bemis on that and Mr. Gately. So I think we have time. And this will be implemented prior to that next phase of development.
Yeah, the commitment we made to you was that we would do the Basin 1, which is this basin here, the reconstruction of that, before we would start, I forgot how we put it. I think it was building start or occupancy. I'm trying to remember how we could do the roads, but we couldn't do the buildings yet or something to that effect. Right. And I'm fine with that. I mean, I'm trying my best to get as much of the third phase complete and restored so that we can actually ensure that we don't have to do this again. Yeah. I want to build this basin one time.
Yeah. So I guess the question would be, would you...
Phase 4 is offline from all of this. Phase 4 is over here.
Right, but what I'm saying is, would you be amenable to, this being built out prior to, with that basin, prior to allowing, construction starts on phase 2?
If you could give just because I'm going to get the work done. I'm not opposed to that, but I would like to have the ability to at least get something in there. It's just revenue stream. I'm just being realistic about life. Is that
right? But I think you'll be able to.
There's no dollars allocated for this, so dollars from that have to come from phase 4. So I'm just saying we're going to have to use the resources from this component of work to reconstruct those off-site improvements because there was no work for that. These dollars to redo the basin here are in that project, but these off-site improvements are all over and above that. So I'm not asking for more than that, just some construction starts would be reasonable.
Through the chair?
Yes, Kim.
The runoff associated with phase 4 is going to head towards that culvert, right?
This
culvert that's being reconstructed.
This here, yes.
So I'm just wondering if there is, it's supposed to be designed so that there's not a peak discharge increase, but I don't know if that's going to make it harder for you to work at that culvert if you have more development kind of running.
But coming into the dry, it's as dry as it's been in a long time right now, scary dry actually. We may be able to start this much sooner. I just don't know what's around the corner. Like we have a 21 again. We end up with some wet periods. I just don't want to be so tied that we can't.
No, I understand.
Get some work done.
From our perspective, I think we don't want this, being put in at the tail end of the project.
If it won't wait.
So I guess we have to figure out.
I'm not sure if I have the phase 4 units, but what we're talking about doing is really just getting this portion of the site was going to stay in its natural condition as well. You have to get a sewer pump station into this point, so the thought that I had was come down to here. And I haven't gone over this with you, but that was the intent, was to do, how are we going to process this job?
So we'll put a condition in, Kim, maybe the second half of the housing units can't be built out until the infrastructure, this proposed, this proposed NOI is implemented.
I'm fine with that.
Does that sound okay? Does that sound okay with
I
everyone?
expect to do this work immediately, Mr. Chairman. It's just I don't know what's ahead of us.
I think that's a fair compromise. Kim, do you agree? That gives them the ability to start some of them.
I guess I foresee too that some of this work may be, the timing of this work may be influenced by seasonability, you know?
Yeah. We knew we weren't going to be able to do it in the spring, and this has been a very unusual spring so far. So.
Yeah, and
this
we
is
just
a summer job, so.
You know, I think we don't have to say that we don't want, you know, as this new phase of the project is being built out, we don't want to experience the same kind of issues with the runoff.
I don't either.
So, you know, the construction phasing needs to be your best friend. So that if, you know, a friend that's so good that, you know, you could call him up and he'll come over and help you move. You know, that's what kind of friend we want when we're talking about this.
No problem.
So,
Believe me.
it's because, you know, it's just, you know, that can't happen again. I mean, that's the bottom line.
I don't disagree.
Just so you guys
It's been a long
understand
road
that, you know, I just want to
haul here, no
put
question.
that out there.
We've come a long, long way.
Yeah, yep, no, I agree. So, okay. Kim, did you have anything else?
Just that it may be prudent for the commission to have a conversation about fines before we wrap this up.
We still owe you money? Fine. I don't know the business side of this. I'm sorry Mr. Gately's not here this evening.
Yeah, so I guess that's the question, is I know that at some point the discussion was around that Mr. Gately had questioned if, you know, the commission would consider the mitigation as in lieu of the fines. Is that still the request on the table?
I
Kind of
would
what's
ask you to consider it to some extent, just because these are significant improvements. We are making some extremely costly improvements. Again, from my perspective, when I look at this is what we were charged with trying to put together to build, and that's where the discharge was going. And at the day we did it, I've always been concerned about that. That's what the plan showed. So we built it and regret it. Should never have built it.
Yeah, Kim, why don't we continue? I mean, it's 31,000 in fines, right? The total?
43,000.
43,000, okay.
Those haven't been assessed, just in advance, right?
43,000, right, you told me that.
31 was true.
Yep, sorry.
Oh, wow.
No, I think they were assessed.
Yeah,
They were assessed, they were just not
They haven't been paid, is what she's saying.
paid.
Well, if I could, if you could table that for the time being, I realize they don't go away. I'm not asking for you to
July
do that this
21?
evening, and maybe we can go through the proof in the pudding approach, and let's see how good the pudding can be, and we talk to you another day.
Yeah, why don't we,
Would that be fair?
continue to hold it in abeyance?
Thank you.
They were assessed.
That's what she's saying, they were assessed, they haven't paid the bill.
Oh, they're
And whether or not we want to approve going forward when they haven't paid their bills yet. is what
I
you're-
think, yeah, I mean, the commission, I think Mr. Gately, you know, requested, you know, we're gonna do this off-site mitigation, would the commission consider it? And the commission said perhaps, and that's kind of where we left it.
Oh, 43's been assessed?
43 is assessed, 6,000 was paid, 43 is assessed.
So 37 outstanding.
No, so the
43 outstanding.
6,000 was from violations which occurred in December of 2018, and then the commission held them in abeyance. They were assessed in 2021 when we started having all the other violations. So the 6,000 from the original violation in 2018 was paid, and then the 43,100 is outstanding from. Wait, Anna broke this down for me. 22,000 in violations. $16,000 from missing SWIP reports, and another $3,900 from violations later in the summer. So,
John?
Yes.
So it doesn't, seems to me that the issue of the fines, the discussion of the fines, resolution of the fines has no bearing on this NOI. I mean, that is I don't see the reason why we couldn't close and approve this, and the fines are separate matter. It's not like he's going to run away.
Yeah.
I tried.
Not you.
No, but I did try.
With the owner. I mean, it's not
Well,
gonna
I
just
think,
hand it in.
I think the other thing we need to think about is, you know, we need to be consistent. And with Turkey Ridge,
That's
the fines were assessed, and, you know, they were required to do a significant amount of work on their own dime to improve the site conditions out there.
Yeah, I kind of see that as a completely different set of circumstances.
But with Turkey Ridge, wasn't the stuff they were supposed to do anyway, they just hadn't done it yet? Or,
Some of it, yeah.
So
This is all new stuff.
I mean, it was
learned
part of the
and
plan, the approved plan is what Turkey Ridge did.
Yeah, you're correct.
Okay.
They didn't know what the hell they were doing.
They just did their stuff out of order. That's
Yeah.
how they got in trouble.
Yeah.
But Jim, I believe what Kim is saying is that the owner is asking not to have to pay the fines because they're doing this work. And it is my opinion that we should assess, continue to collect the fines, that there shouldn't be any consideration, because this is work that should have been done anyway.
Just to throw something else in the mix, the commission also had discussions about should these fines be get directed to the town of Ashland for some of the the impacts that they had resulted from some of these violations.
Let them get their own fine.
Yeah, we did work
We
items
middlemen
out
for
with
them?
Ashland, and, they've been a cooperative neighbor, but also I think they did work that they didn't get a permit for, from my perspective, and when we followed plans, I have to say, we were building plans in accordance with their approved, and I do think that was a problem, unfortunately, and we all had to go through that cycle to resolve it.
Yeah, I mean, let's table the fines so we can think about it. Let's not make a rash decision tonight.
May I ask a question? Is there normally an expectation for when it gets paid, once it's assessed?
The bylaw, I think it says 20 days.
20 days.
Well,
And we are at 19 months or something like that? I didn't add it up, but I'm guessing.
No problem.
We've been in this process since that moment, and
Big
we've been
interest, don't we?
redesigning this from
18 votes max in
21.
Massachusetts.
All right, well,
I agree with let's table it.
yeah, let's,
I guess I think I have some questions that I need to ask and need to get answered in terms of like legally stuff happening. So it would, my plea to the commission, it would help me kind of in the background to kind of sort some stuff out that I could bring to the table. We could talk about at the next hearing if that.
Relative to fines.
Relative to fines, yeah.
Not relative to this.
When we're talking about fines,
Yeah.
I always have to go, to the lawyers
sure.
and
there's a lot of kind of
at play in the background.
yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on between the towns.
Yes, it would make my life easier if I had a little bit more time to give you a little bit
Spend
better
10 grand
guidance
on
on
town
this.
council.
Yeah.
Let's table it. Can we, I think we can table it and still vote on the NOI, because we have the next phase of the project. So we still have the ability to hold things back, right? So,
Yeah.
in the interest of moving the project along, I think, is there a motion to close and approve the NOI
So
as discussed?
moved.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. And opposed? Okay. Thank you. And we'll get back to you on the fines, Mr. Bemis.
Especially if, Vin wants to chime in. Yeah. Joe, do you want?
Yeah, you can probably bail if you want, Joe.
I don't know.
It's a long ride home. Thanks for coming down. And, we're remote going forward, so
Yeah.
You would have it for the next
Heard this wrong. I want to down too.
Another 2 weeks. Okay, that's what I'm asking.
It's a couple more things.
Well, no, you know where I've been.
Bad. I left my munchkin home alone.
I get it. You only have so many
All right,
hours.
Carrie's,
Thank you.
Carrie's youngster is home alone, so we need to kind of...
Oh, he had to put himself to bed for it, little
Hey,
dude.
sounds like fun.
I know, right? He's good. Independent.
Man, could I get in trouble?
All right, thank you, Joe. Yep, have a safe ride home.
Responsible child. His
Okay,
birthday's
so
tomorrow.
the College Rock climbing request,
College Rock
continuation. Kim, you want to give us an update on?
Sure. So, at the last meeting, you all sent me on a simple task that turned out to be really difficult.
It's usually the way it works, isn't it?
Yeah. So we talked to a gentleman from Greater Boston Climbing School, if you recall. So he's looking to hold some lessons at College Rock. And the conversation that we kind of had was, should we issue a permit? Can we collect fees for said issuance of permit? And just kind of how do we move forward with this land management wise? I met with Parks and Recreation as kind of the department that usually has facilities and manages kind of facility rental and whatnot. I also met with our town accountant, the assistant town accountant, and the assistant town manager, Elaine, to kind of flush some of these issues out. And the takeaway is that it's a little bit grayer than we may have originally anticipated.
I never thought it was black and white.
Yeah, so there's not really an official town policy addressing the use of public lands for paid services. Like if a private citizen comes in and is kind of utilizing that public land and collecting a fee on that.
Just for Parks and Rec, though?
Parks and Rec does it for, they have established policies around their facilities. So that's something we would probably need to, if we wanted to start a permit program, we would probably need to establish a policy. So we could define who needs to obtain the permit, what circumstances, what kind of conditions we'd want them to follow. For example, like how much parking would they get? What kind of uses are permitted and what are not? When we're talking about College Rock, somebody may not want to just do rock climbing. Somebody may come in and say, hey, I want to have a yoga class here, and I'm gonna, charge $20 a head. And then we have to figure out kind of, where we draw the line on who needs to get a permit and who doesn't. So an interesting thing is Parks and Rec doesn't tend to rent facilities to out-of-town groups. That was an interesting tidbit. Parks and Rec, they don't carry any additional liability or insurance beyond the liability requirements that we had already verified that the gentleman had for the rock climbing permit. Basically, they name the town on their liability as a named insured.
We actually, the Conservation Commission is actually the record owner of that property.
That is correct. Yep.
So we got to be named conservation if it goes forward.
We are covered as being named under the town of Hopkinton.
Okay.
Yeah. Parks and Rec did make a suggestion to me, which I thought was a good suggestion. He said, I would consider a sign that says, like, use the property at your own risk. So I think that's a good idea in terms of liability.
But we've never done that.
In terms of collecting a fee, we do not, Conservation doesn't have any existing accounts which were established that would allow us to collect such a fee. When these accounts are established by town meeting, they are specifically stated, here's what fees can go into it and here's what fees can go out of it. And so we looked at all the town meetings that established our existing accounts, and this would not qualify. So we can collect a fee. It would go straight into the general fund for the town. If we wanted to, we could establish a new account for this type of purpose, and then we'd probably say, the purpose is for maintenance of parcels owned by Conservation. If we needed to fix, there were tire ruts in the parking lot from use or whatnot, we could get some soil and, smooth it out and, maybe do some cleaning or get the signs. But we would have to get that account established through town meeting. Alternatively, we could consider that asking groups to post a bond or making a donation, a small donation to the town for use. And then also just something else to consider is that if we do issue permits, it could bring into question fairness, which groups get to use it and which don't. So we may have to start thinking about potentially advertising, like at the beginning of the season. This is a facility, it's open for use, which contractors want to use it type of deal. So yeah, it's a little complex.
So we're not going to figure this out in the next, month, 2 months, or even 6 months, I don't think. So I don't know, Kim, maybe we just make a suggestion that I like the idea of putting the sign up, climb at your own risk.
Wait, can I just say something about that?
Yeah.
There have been court cases where if you put a sign up that says, use at your own risk, or pass at your own risk except for a public roadway, that acknowledges that there's a risk and somebody can sue you. It's like, don't have a sign that says dangerous dog, because that means you recognize the danger, right? And people have sued homeowners because they have a sign that says dangerous dog, or beware of dog danger. And beware of dog is okay, but when you put the word danger or risk, as far as it opens things up. And then just furthermore, and just in general, I think this is a really bad precedent to do this. This is supposed to be for passive recreation. I wouldn't consider this passive, totally passive. It's using it for commercial purposes. I don't like the idea at all. I'll just say that.
I'm the opposite. I like the idea. I'd be willing to do permits out.
But it's too convoluted and complicated, as Kim was talking about.
The other thing we could do is do nothing.
The other thing we can do is give it to, transfer.
People have been going to use it.
It's just to say, people climb here all the time. I
People
guess
do
really
all
what
right,
stops
exactly.
him from bringing a group of people is saying, hey,
Yeah.
let's climb, and then afterwards pay me.
Yeah, right.
Because I taught you, so.
The Conservation Commission has no other property that would be similar in terms of like renting out a, whatever it is, a pavilion or something.
Well, it doesn't have a pavilion, but certainly has property, and if
Yeah, but
people
not-
wanted to run some kind of an event on that property.
What are they going to do?
Well, remember, Kerry, when Long Live Farms, we had that parcel off of Pond Street, and she wanted to put like a little vegetable stand on our property and have people pull in and pay. And ultimately, we told her that she couldn't do it.
Right.
It was Long Life Farms. Yeah, I mean, I felt bad.
And why did
But if I recall, we talked to legal about it. And like if someone was pulling out and got hit, the town could potentially be liable.
I mean, there's a serious parking issue at egress and ingress at College Rock. Who wants to spend money on improving it? It's supposed to be as natural as possible.
Well, that was the
Next
other
thing you know,
point.
you're gonna have,
That was the
like,
other point that
Greyhound
Kim had, is if he has 10 people in the class, that's going to be 11 cars that show up and
how's that gonna work?
are parking along College Road there.
Yeah.
So that's going to basically take up the entire parking lot.
Y'all are mean. I thought.
Is REI still using it? Wasn't there some discussion whether REI was
Do they use it?
As far as I'm aware, REI is using it, and I need to figure out if the commission wants to address that, then we need to, if the commission decides that,
I'm gonna look up on it.
some type of permit program or regulation is warranted, then I'm definitely gonna reach out to REI.
Do they does anybody know, do they advertise like on their website, climbing lessons College Rock, for real? Well, they have no permission to do that. I mean, how can they do that?
They did get permission from Don in 2017, but they never, haven't heard from him
He
since.
retired.
If there was
I
a
don't
permit,
remember
would
that.
Parks and Rec, I mean, I know we own the property, but we don't typically do this. Would Parks and Rec be willing to manage it?
That is something that, Elaine suggested. I'd have to coordinate with the new Parks and Rec director when they get here.
That makes the most sense, I think.
I don't know. I'm not sure, but possibly.
So I guess for this year, the question, I mean, none of this is going to happen in the next few weeks, which is what this guy is looking for. you know, a request for this season. So do we want to just do nothing, or I guess the suggestion that Kim and I were talking about was maybe having him donate like a couple picnic tables to put down there? And let him know that we're in the process of figuring out, you know, how we're going to go forward with a program. You know, we're just not going to have time to do it for this year.
I've been very quiet through this. I'm very enthusiastically supportive because I think giving people an opportunity to make use of something we've got.
But it's commercial use, though.
So, people cry.
I mean, if the PTA or, you know, I don't know who the hell else, some public organization wanted to use it, then fine, but it's a commercial. So let me ask you something, Ed.
Yeah.
What would you think about McDonough property or Jenner property?
Yeah.
Letting people pay to go out and climb the rocks over there, called a... Yeah?
This is different because it's a very unique thing that I don't think enough people
I think
know.
we're
I
opening
agree with
ourselves
that.
up for huge liability.
I'm okay with it,
But
too.
that's what the insurance is for.
Yeah.
How much, what is the liability limits that they have? Please tell me it's at least 10 million.
I think it's 2. I can hold on.
Let's see, okay. Well, that's,
I mean, my opinion
so
is
if somebody falls off that rock and becomes a quadriplegic, $2 million is not even going to, you know, be pocket change.
So what happens if I go there and climb them up and I fall? Like,
You're on your own.
Why?
I think
because you didn't pay somebody to go there. You're not
No, but
being paid.
It's an attractive nuisance that you didn't fence off.
No, bullshit. Sorry. My apologies, H-Camp.
So my opinion is that the do nothing, I don't even think we asked for a donation. If they want to make another donation to the community, but not directly to the town, I think that complicates things. And it sets a precedence that I don't want to track later, but I mean, I think we can encourage them. It sounds like that organization wants to support the community. If they support another nonprofit or something in the community, that would be lovely.
And if we can make it work, I would support it.
The state park has at least one commercial operation within it.
Yeah, it's a state park.
With the voting?
I was trying to think of a way to, you know, so if a donation's made, that it goes towards something that benefits conservation rather than going into like a general fund.
Well, so then if we...
Well, that's the problem. If it goes to general fund.
Yeah, but so we get an article on the...
Open space.
The town meeting for a budget for a pot, an account for the Conservation Commission, so that when there's an event like this and there is a fee, that the fee comes to this pot. I mean, you said we don't have that, so...
I'm kind of okay with it going to the general fund. I feel like if it got popular and it got enough use, then maybe, you know, at that point you go to CPC and...
Yeah, but you know, if we had a fund, then when somebody came along looking for turtle signs...
Yeah, no,
I was a little shocked to find that I have, well, I mean, I always have the land use budget that I can possibly use, but I was a little shocked to find out that the Conservation Commission does not have a dedicated fund for any kind of land management maintenance.
Absolutely. And we need that, by the way, for invasives management, I think. It should not revert back, any excess should not go back to the general fund.
And Kim, that's part of the reason why Open Space came to the Conservation Commission and said, would you let us manage this property?
Right.
Because we're wealthy. We've got tons and tons of money for this sort of thing.
So you're going to get your own turtle sign.
All right, I guess maybe this is another one that we can kind of stew on.
We got to at least give this guy.
Yeah, I think for this year, I think for this year we just tell them, go ahead and do it.
Don't tell anybody.
Go ahead and do it?
Yeah.
For real? I thought we were going to tell them you can't do it.
How are we gonna regulate that, though?
We're going to regulate him not doing his little business?
People climb there all the time.
I mean,
Let him climb there, but let him go behind the rock and exchange cash. I don't care about that.
I just think it's tough to
sanction
enforce, you know, telling them not to do it. Because then, you know...
So how much do we charge? We resolved it. How much do we charge? Where's the money go?
We have not resolved. We're just at, do we charge?
I think it should be $5,000 a class. That's the fee. He can charge whatever the hell he needs to make money.
All right.
Okay, well, that's all right.
We're still on
do we have to vote?
HCAM, so...
You're not voting on anything, huh?
Not yet, there's nothing to vote on.
Yeah.
Unless someone wants to make a motion.
How about if we were
Motion to adjourn?
How about if we were to give management responsibility to Parks and Rec?
Wait, no, we need to come to a consensus on this. We can't just leave.
How about if we gave management of the property to Parks and Rec?
We need to either make a decision of we're going to allow them to do it this year or not allow them to do it. If we're going to allow them, do we want to have them make a donation? So I guess the first question is, do we want to allow or not allow them to, and not only him, I think we'd have to reach out to REI too and tell them they can't do it, right?
Yeah.
So we need a motion?
Well, then we need to go after REI too.
Do we need a motion?
Yeah.
So I would make a motion that we allow groups to use College Rock.
I second it.
For the year, as we sort out the other
This
issues.
year.
Correct.
For this season.
For this
yeah.
season, through the winter.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
I gotta be opposed.
Okay, and then I guess the second motion would be, do we want to charge a fee or accept a donation?
I am not in a position where I can accept it. Well, yeah, I could accept a fee. It would have to go to the general fund. There's no way I can accept it to Concom.
It goes to the general fund, it's not earmarked for anything.
I make a motion that we do not collect fees this year as we work through the process and try to come up with a better plan. So through
I
this
second
winter.
that motion.
Okay, all those in favor?
This is
Aye.
of not charging.
No fee this year.
I'm
till we
in
figure
favor
it
of
all
not
out.
charging fees,
Okay.
figuring it out later.
All right, I'm an aye as well. Opposed?
I gotta be able to oppose this too.
Okay. All right.
I am going to include a friendly amendment to users that I would encourage them to carpool.
Yeah, that's gonna work.
One of my concerns is the neighborhood. and
Why
cars.
don't we encourage them to park at the Milford Bike Trail and walk up from there? They're
I'm
so
happy with
worn
this
out by the
vote,
time they get there.
and I would
they
love to have
climb in.
people climb, but I am worried about other stuff that can happen, so and I love that this guy did it the right way, that he came to us and asked, unlike REI, apparently. But I am worried about the neighborhood, I'm worried about some other legal possibilities, but I'm cool with the 1 year, and then let's sort it out.
Well, part of the 1 year is an experiment to see what happens
That's
and
true,
what
too.
the impacts
That's
are,
true,
and
too.
then what kind of management that needs to
Yeah,
get
and
put
we
on.
have
is this
verified that he
seasonal?
has adequate insurance consistent with our other town contractors, so.
And he's a licensed outdoor instructor
Yeah.
too, right, which we verified.
Is this season, like, not in the winter, or what? It's
That was the
year-round, right?
motion. Yeah.
Does it climb ice and stuff?
I don't know that we get
crazies
enough
do.
ice to climb ice there.
So we do have one public forum request. 4 Yale Road, 188-1673. It's a certificate of compliance for the construction of a single-family home. Joe went out, he found a few landscape yard leaf piles. I'll have a conversation with the homeowner about landscaping. Other than that, pretty consistent with the approved plans.
That was like, when you go through it, it's like one of the first houses on the right.
Yeah, was that woman?
It's a new house. It was like a little cottage that was torn down.
Yeah.
So
There was
can I
that lady
ask a
couple years ago,
procedural
I think,
question?
before, Yeah, Mary Ruth.
Yeah.
Okay, is there a motion to?
Procedural
Can I
question.
just
Oh,
ask a
yes, sorry.
procedural, why is this a public forum request and not just on the agenda?
Because we didn't know if we were gonna get Lucas's review on time for the meeting, but they're looking to close.
Okay.
And there's nothing. there's no
Oh, so we didn't have
comments.
time to put it on the agenda, but we want to deal with it, so it's public forum. Okay, thank you, I get it.
So motion to issue the COC for Yellow Road.
So I'll make that motion.
And the second, please.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
As in said.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay, now,
What time's Chipotle close?